I'm interested in the three sort of middle kingdoms that you describe. But it seems to me that even with the printing press and the written word, that eventually somebody learns how to control it that has some political correlation, so that power that can flow through many dimensions will discover that this dimension is essential to control. And we may be beginning to see it. I'd be interested in your comments as an aside on ideas of making sure that the pipe, for some people, that they can control what goes through their pipe. But more broadly, how can you construct communication over the internet to weaken the likelihood that it can be concentrated, or control of the information that flows over it can be concentrated in the hands of those that already have power in many other dimensions, whether it's land ownership, wealth, military bureaucracy, or whatever, because that's where history says this will go.
So your concern is that traditional forces will essentially control those assets and then ultimately impose their views on them.
They've always controlled them in the past, and they will see this as just something that is a challenge, and they will learn how to direct it and channel it and filter it.
Google has taken a very strong view of something called net neutrality, which is that the technical term is that it's something called the end-to-end principle in the internet, which means that every device and every actor can see the same thing, that there's no degradation in what's visible. And the internet is a success not because of the internal router work and things like that, which I participated in, but the enormous creativity of the ends, all of the companies and the devices and so forth that we all use today. People are always finding interesting ways of extending it. So net neutrality is a key tactical point. I'm not as worried about it as you might be, because I understand how difficult it is to go in and impose your bias on a single node of the internet. In order to fundamentally achieve the vision that you need, you have to be a dictator with guns and all those kinds of things that dictators have, because you have to be able to shut down the borders. And here's the analogy that I would use. If you were elected dictator of some random small country for a day, and it was the morning, the first thing you would do is take over all the television stations with your tanks. The second thing you do is close all the borders. And then you had control over both the physical resource, the people, as well as the communication to them. Anybody who can get that control over the internet is quite dangerous. Right? It's a real problem. The good news about the internet is it's structured to completely make that extremely difficult, because modern routing routes around those sorts of techniques. And so unless you are able to get control of all of the interconnection points, which is essentially impossible in most, at least, democratic countries, it's very, very difficult to see how the kind of manipulation you're describing would occur. Let's say it did occur. How would you and I, as free-thinking people in the middle of this evil activity, behave? There are various techniques involving end-to-end encryption that we could use, which is dangerous for other reasons. We can also use anonymous servers and so forth to find each other. So it's possible to provide, even under the scenario you described, enough of a resistance movement that at least in a democracy, in a reasonably liberal or reasonably open country, that we can do that. So the real danger is not from corporate actors who don't have the resources, but from literally the dictator who takes over the whole country. Right? And that scenario could occur, and they could do it under the following scenario. We hate pornography is illegal, therefore we're going to ban it. Well, in order to ban pornography, we have to look at every packet to see if there's any pornography in it. So now we have a set of humans who look at every piece of information looking for pornography, and oh, by the way, they delete the following other things too, and it becomes a slippery slope. So there's a very interesting tension there, and one which I think is the defining tension for networking.